Alright folks, we should be live. Let me pull down the music volume a little bit so you can hear us better. And we'll keep it right around about there. Alright, and Lance, I see you. Give me a quick sound check, please.
Hello. Happy Thursday morning.
Yeah, Thursday. I see you, I hear you, and you look okay, so I'm going to assume we are good. Putting back the music just a tad more. All right, so we should be all set. Yeah, cool. So yeah, good morning. Very good morning if you're joining us from North America. Good afternoon, good evening for anywhere else in the world. Welcome to Code It Live. This is our channel where we code about various technologies throughout the week. Hey, we see our good friend Ivana in the chat room. Good to see you. Good morning, good morning. I'm Sam Basu. I'm a DevOps advocate here at Progress Software, and with me I have my good friend Lance McCarthy. So Lance, go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
Hi everybody. Thank you for coming and watching us do a little bit of fun coding today. My name is Lance McCarthy. I am an employee at Progress Software. I work with Sam. I'm also a Microsoft MVP for Windows development. Do a lot of C# and XAML stuff.
Absolutely. Yes, Lance is a good friend of mine, and he's just all around awesome. So I'm glad to have him back on the show. This is our Xamarin Thursdays. We talk about all things XAML, all things C#, mobile dev, and what some of these changes mean for us. We have a lot of announcement from Build, which we'll dive into. But today, I think we want to focus on something very specific, and it's actually really useful if you know how to use it right, and that is effects in Xamarin Forms, right? Is that right, Lance?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
And the name sounds like it's something else, but by the end of this session, you'll have a very powerful tool in your toolbox.
Yeah. So just so you know, folks, Lance is driving. We actually see his desktop. We see his Visual Studio. But Lance, do you want to pull up the docs site? Do you want to pull up like where to start with effects in the first place? And I'll
Yeah.
have some pretty basic questions.
Matter of fact, it's right there.
Okay, so let's kind of peel back a little bit. Before we dive in, let's try to understand what it is that this thing is. So, from my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, so Xamarin Forms is an abstraction. Xamarin iOS or Xamarin Android let us write C# that is a shared code base, and we were able to add business logic to iOS and Android native apps. But Xamarin Forms is another layer of abstraction on the UI stack itself, and this is difficult, as we all know. iOS, Android, and Windows, these platforms are very different, so we are looking for a XAML markup that gives us native UI controls as we run things. And part of it is a little piece of code called renderer, right, Lance? So this is the code. So when we in our XAML, when we say here's a button, here is a list view, here's a drop down or a grid, that is absolutely a XAML markup. But then this piece of code, the renderer, turns around and renders native UI for iOS and Android, or every other platform that you support with Xamarin Forms. And we can customize that renderer a little bit to make it more custom for each platform. But that's the whole custom renderers thing, right? So that's all I know, and I know it's a little difficult to do so. So what are effects?
So it's in the same space as you would put a custom renderer. So that abstraction layer that you talked about, the platform renderers, are where it would translate your XAML markup into the native control. So let's say you say a button in XAML and the button's text equals hi. The renderer would say on UWP, it would create a UWP button and then set the content property to whatever you set the text property to. That happens in the renderer. And if you want a custom renderer, you want to override default behavior, you override it with the custom renderer. What an effect does is it will give you a similar effect, but in a much easier to code way. You can think of it as you use a renderer when you want to override a native property. You don't want this native thing to happen.
Mm-hmm.
With an effect, you can customize it without overriding things. So if you need lower level stuff and you want to prevent what the renderer does, then you'd use a custom renderer. But if you're just looking to set some things to be a little different that isn't available in Xamarin Forms API layer, you can use an effect to do that.
So what I hear you say is like if I mean I actually written a custom render and it's not for the faint-hearted. There are things you just need to know, like how to expose properties and how to bubble up events. So you're saying if you don't if you don't want to override like basic behavior, you want to just change a couple of properties on the native control that has been rendered itself, then you don't have to write the renderer, right? And
Right.
that's what FX can
Yep.
do. Okay. So
Yep.
you won't be able to override like any methods, but you'll be able to expose like properties on a native UI stack through FX.
Yeah, the easiest way to think about it is if you just wanted to have C# access to that Xamarin iOS API, you can do it in the effect.
Okay.
Or the UWP control. You can do it right in the effect because you get a reference to that native control. The native control has been created already at this point, but you have code access to it now. And that's usually what most people want when they go through that huge overhead of creating a custom renderer.
Okay. Okay. I've never used FX. I'm curious, but is this a place to start? Like this page that you have pulled up?
Yep. So
Okay.
this page here gives you the high level and walk you through going down to more complicated stuff like invoking effects. Down here, you can even pass parameters through the abstraction layer. But my recommendation would be to do creating an effect. It'll take an entry control and show you how to do the interface and how to do the native class for it. It's a pretty quick tutorial. You can do it in about 15 minutes and
Okay.
you'll have a good understanding afterwards.
So before you jump into code, like what I'm hearing is you're going to be able to edit properties on native UI through C Sharp, right? That's what you want to expose.
Yep.
So do you actually have to write like iOS or Android code to expose those properties? Like anything platform specific?
It would be a platform specific
Okay.
API.
Okay.
And that's the goal of using this is to be able to use that platform specific API because you couldn't do that in Xamarin Forms.
Gotcha. Okay. All right, folks. You know where to start then. I'm new to this. I'm all ears. So teach me, Lance.
All right. So the first thing you would do is you create an interface. But before we even get there, let's just start with the control and then say, hey, I want to change this. And then we'll create the effect to change it.
Okay.
So very first thing I'll do, I'm just going to add a chart. So I figured a chart would be a good example of, so this is a main page, just blank main page. I'm clearing it out and I'm going to copy in my charts. XAML to save a little bit of time. But basically, I will explain what I paste in and not just gloss over it.
Okay. So I'm looking at. Well, what are we looking at? This is main page XAML. What type
Yep.
of project is this?
So this is the Xamarin Forms project. If we look over to the right, you'll see that we have the
Hang on.
Xamarin Forms class library.
Yeah. Hang on. I don't think I'm able to see your properties window. I'm just seeing the code.
Maybe if I make it wider, how about that?
It's starting to peak, but I do have like a little bit of your screen chopped off to fit, so I don't think it's showing. Can you bring it over more to the left, or can you like
Yeah,
squish Visual Studio?
yeah,
There you
let's
go.
try that.
There you go. There you go. That's it. Perfect. Yep.
I'm waiting for the Twitch page to update so I know exactly what to see. But while that's happening, yeah, so now I understand why you couldn't tell where it was.
Right.
Yeah, so we're in the Xamarin Forms class library project right now, and we are on main page. And I'm just throwing a grid in there, and I'm going to paste in a chart.
So is this is this a project where you did anything, or is this just a boilerplate Xamarin Forms project?
So the base project that I started with is a boilerplate Xamarin Forms project with the assemblies to be able to use this chart. It's from the Telerik controls.
Okay.
But it could be any chart. It could be any button. Nothing special.
Oh, wait. So you're saying it's not just the default Xamarin Forms UI, but you could also use effects on custom controls, like some of the Telerik controls that we have?
Yep.
Okay.
So this is the
So
the
I actually want to see both. Like, if you want to show me something that is Xamarin Forms like default, and then something else for Telerik, if you can.
yeah, it's the same for both, so we can do them
Okay.
at the same time.
And if you don't mind just bumping your font size up a little bit, please, just so we see it a little better.
Here.
Yep, perfect.
I'm going to comment this out.
All right.
Actually, we can take that out for now. So I'm going to add a button so we can have the that secondary effect for both of them. So I'll put this chart on the top, and we'll put the button on the bottom. So all we're doing right now is we're just setting up the XAML UI with the basic chart and a few bars of data.
Okay.
And we'll go in and change that after. Let's see, we'll use the button to load data. Load the data for that the chart is actually going to use. And normally I wouldn't use an event handler, but for this, I just use a clicked.
Oh, and Lance, one more thing. I have you on the left-hand side corner of the screen. So
Okay.
if you type something way down at the bottom, that's blocking with your camera feed.
I see it. So let me move it up there.
Yep.
So I added a button to the second row in the grid,
Okay.
and it's just a button click handler.
Okay.
So a little extra code in here. So I based this off one of my existing effects demos, which has a few different series in there. It's a little more complex, and I'm just going to take the easiest demo from that and use it for today.
Okay.
So what we're seeing is just a chart. Let me get rid of all these extra using statements. So we just have a chart in here.
And you don't have any data, do you? Or you just...
Nope, we're going to add that next.
Okay.
Yep. So we're going to add a view model. We'll just call it view model. And we'll need something to put in the chart. So let's add a class with two properties. One is a numeric property and one is a string property. Because here in the chart, I have the string property called category. We'll use that for the labels and what to show for the data. I'm usually faster than the category, and then we'll have a double for the value. And then the view model will just have 4 data points. So we'll just see an observable collection.
Wait, you're typing again in the left corner. Sorry.
How about that?
There you go. Yep.
Okay. So it's going to create some items for the chart. Call it chart data.
So, folks in the chat room, if you're just joining us, you have Lance and my Twitter handles down there at the bottom of the screen. We are trying to dig into effects in Xamarin Forms and kind of how to use them, when to use them, and when not to go into custom renderers for Xamarin Forms. So this is like core XAML and C# dev, and I think Lance is just trying to get a grid or no, a chart to render with some fake data, and then we'll see how we modify that.
All right, so we have the view model set up. We set the binding context to the page to an instance of the view model. And
where is your item collection? Oh, I see you have an observable collection, and are you newing it up anywhere?
yep, so we have a chart data property in the view model, which is an observable collection of this class. And I use a little trick with link. If you ever, this is a nice little tip I learned several years ago. Instead of doing a for each loop and creating all of your mock-up data in a for each loop, you can just use enumerable.range, and that gives you a list of ints that you can use.
Wait,
And
what? This
yeah,
is.
so
I
let's
gotta
do that.
give my. This is my aha thing. I've never used a shortcut like that.
Yeah, so let's take it out of the constructor there so we can see it a little clearer. And so yeah, enumerable.range is a quick way to get, thousands of items. And I'm only using 5 here. So, and this is where the for loop is by using the select method. And so for each one of these items with an int, you can create a list of the items that you want.
Nice.
So I take that int and then I create 5 item objects, and I can pass the enumerator value into the creation of the new sample data. So this will give us 4 items that will say item 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the values are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Interesting. Nice shortcut. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we set the binding context, and on main page, what did we call it? Chart data.
Okay.
So right now, this should just work. Just to make sure, let's spin it up. And so we have a good starting point.
Chat room, you're being quiet today, so let us know if you have any questions, anything crazy you want to see Lance build.
All right.
Ooh,
so,
we're using UWP, not iOS or not Android. Okay.
So all of these techniques I'll show today work the same for both. I choose UWP because it's easier for me to demo it, quicker to demo it over the stream.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, the iOS, I develop a lot for iOS, and the simulator has come a long way, but it still takes a while to kind of go to Xcode, do the build, come back, and spin up the simulator.
One great thing with the later versions of Xamarin Forms is hot restart. You can plug your iPhone right into the PC and don't even have a Mac in the equation.
Yep.
The only thing you do need is iTunes installed, so it uses the Bonjour service, but that's an easy price to pay for being able to deploy to your iPhone from a PC.
Yep. Okay, so we have a chart and it's rendering some data. I'm still confused. Like, so when you did that for loop, like, go back to that enumerable code one more time, please. Like, what made how are you giving the items their value?
Do the selector value. So this is the same as doing a for loop.
So the value is I. Okay. So the value literally of each items 1 to 5 is like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yep.
And the
because the range gave us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Gotcha. Okay. And then the category is item 1, item 2. Okay, I see. Okay. This is interesting.
Super fast way to build sample data. Like I write maybe 6 or 7 demo apps every day at work, and doing this has changed everything for me. And I moved a lot of this stuff into a NuGet package. I have a common helpers package on NuGet that has all the sample data, collections, all sorts of stuff like that.
Nice.
All right, so we have a working chart. I didn't see the button though. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the project to load that data when the button is clicked instead. So what we're going to do is come down into the button here.
Yeah, why didn't the button show?
I think it was covered. I'll have to double check that in this next deploy.
Also, let's check your rows. You had the button in row 1, right?
Yeah, which should be row index 1, which is in the second row.
Right.
And chart data. Actually, we can do it like this instead.
Yep, scroll up, so you can see what you're typing. There you go.
So what all I'm doing here is I'm taking that sample data loading into the click event.
I see. Okay.
So we're taking it out of here, out of the model constructor. So we start with a blank observable collection, and then we add it down here instead. That way we can do it an effect for the button too. And let's deploy, make sure it works. So when that button gets clicked, let's do a null accessor here. I love this feature. I think it's C#7. So instead of having to do if view model is not null, then do load data, you can just add a little question mark. Boom. And let's double check why we couldn't see that button. We are in row 1. Let's build a screen with it and give it a little margin. Okay. And while that's loading, we'll take a closer look at where the labels show up. This will be the pain point for our example today.
Okay.
Because there's our load data button. Load the data. Excellent.
Yep.
Okay. So now we're at the point. It's like, I want the button to have a green background. Yes, there is a background property in Xamarin Forms, but imagine there wasn't, right? And we wanted to change the background color, and the background color is only available on the native platform button. That's why we would create an effect for it.
Okay.
So let's do that first. The first step in creating an effect is you create an interface, and the interface has a special property to it that we'll discuss when we get to it. So let's add a new class. And you can name these whatever you want. So in this case, it's background. So we'll call it button background effect.
So I'm curious here, since you are going to be writing like platform specific things, because that's what you want to get to. If like you are trying to expose a property that's just only on iOS or only on UWP, you would have to have some logic that kind of fails like gracefully, right, for other platforms.
Well, the advantage to this is that other platform will never see the iOS specific code.
I see.
Because
okay.
we're going to have a class that's only in the platform project.
Gotcha.
That's why this is the key part here. You see how this is an interface. We're just going to have a promise that there are only two things. The two things that the promise are is on detached and on attached.
Okay.
Let's show you that now. So the first thing you would do anyways is you just do platform effect.
And actually, Lance, before you code anymore, if you can do me a favor, like I'm seeing it on our Skype call, but could you like move Visual Studio like the height of it a little bit up, so we see like the bottom of your screen, because I think it's getting a little chopped up.
Yeah, I don't see my taskbar, and I see the properties are getting cut in half. Okay.
Yeah. It's just
right.
whatever I'm able to fit here for the resolution.
That's fine. I mean, I have 1080 pixels here to play with. Yeah. So let me know when that's looking good for you.
It still doesn't show like the bottom of Visual Studio. Is it possible to move it up any further or not?
I did. I moved it up. I was wondering if it caught up yet.
No, I'm not seeing it here on my side. Yeah, see, now I see it, but this is way too small. So you have some more
Maybe it didn't
space.
update.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, yeah. It seems like sometimes it doesn't change. It's a little behind. Oh, that was a little too much. The joys of live streaming.
Yes. And pair coding over. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, for what it's worth, like even if I don't see your blue bar down here at the bottom of the screen, I mean, I'm seeing your code.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. So with an effect, it's an interface. So we're in the Xamarin Forms class library right now, and the class you inherit from is platform effect.
Okay. And where does it come from? That's the Xamarin Forms class?
Yep.
Okay.
So sometimes your IntelliSense or autocomplete will add too much, but we don't need that. And you're going to see that it asks for two things.
Okay.
Something's wrong here. Did I put this in the wrong project? No. Oh, that's my fault. Platform effect goes into the native platform. In the Xamarin Forms project, it's routed effect. So routing effect is what you want to base from. And the two promises. Yeah, routing effect. And it needs two things. Once this catches up. And using Xamarin Forms. I don't know what's going on here. Let's take this out and then do a quick build. All right, let's put it back in. That's my bad. It's not an interface. There we go. It acts like an interface, and make this public. Get rid of this and put a string. Okay, so other than my misspelling of Twitch, we have a good starting point. So we create a class, not an interface, and we inherit from routing effect. The public constructor that you have to use looks like this. And there's something special about this string here. Two things you need. One is called a resolution group name, which is just like my company name, is the demo that part is the actual name of the effect. So call it my company, just like Microsoft does. And then dot whatever this effect's name is. You can take a safer approach to this and use name of. So you use name of this class. But for simplicity of the demo, we'll just keep it as a string for now. So this is all we need right now in the Xamarin Forms layer. And what we do is we come back to the XAML that we want to use the effect in. Any Xamarin Forms element has a property called effects. And you'll see that it's a list. So you can have more than one effect on any control. So let's add an instance of our new class. Button background effect. It was portable. So this is it. Like nothing special. All we're doing is we're just saying, hey, Xamarin Forms, look to see if there is this defined in the native platform. And the way it looks for what it's defined is using this string here. So let's go take a look at the.
So I got a couple of questions.
Okay.
So first thing is like, what is that my company meant to do? Like I see, like it's just kind of the namespace thingy that we do for like on a project level?
Kind of. The resolution group name is an assembly attribute that we'll add right now. At the top of the native class, let's add. I typically like to do a dot name, so I'll do this in C#, but the class is still going to be button background effect. And let's worry about that after. Let's do the resolution group name first. So to answer your question, we do.
Yeah.
And here is where we put my company.
Gotcha.
And that's one of the ways that it initially finds. So it's kind of like a namespace, right? You know that underneath this group name, you'll be able to look for other things.
Gotcha.
The second part is the export the effect. And there are two parameters here. We are telling Xamarin Forms that it is this class and it has this name. So we do a type of. And you want to be careful here because if you're using the same class name for both, it doesn't know which one to use. Because I have a class in my class library in .portable, but I also have this class, which is in UWP. I want to use this one. And I highly recommend just fully qualifying it.
Yeah.
Like that. The same thing for the next part. So this is where that second part of it is. So this name here is what it's going to look for. And we could do this. And that will make the match for you. But in a real app, you want to use name of. And do the same thing again.
So I got one more question. If you go back to the where you were implementing the interface, the routing effects thing, what happens when you go to routing effects definition? Like, is that within Xamarin Forms? Like, can you hover over that? And
yeah, let's see if we can extract it. Yeah, so I just F12'd on it.
Yeah. So you
the
are.
Effect ID.
Yeah, I see. And so when you define an effect like this, like you are exposing that effect to essentially like every view element in Xamarin Forms?
Only the ones that you define it on. So
I see.
I did have to, get the act. You're creating an instance of this.
Gotcha.
So this is the class here. It's an effect class, and you're defining it's a routing effect. And the key part of the routing effect is this here. So this is the ID. The ID consists of two things. Now, in the example part, like how do you use it? Behind the scenes, it looks for that ID. And in the native platform, if it finds an ID for that match, it'll use this effect. So what exactly is the effect?
Yeah. Yeah, I see what you're saying. So, I mean, even though every view element in Xamarin Forms has that effects property, it's only available to the ones that you explicitly choose to use it on.
Yeah, it's an empty list for anything else.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So, like I had it backwards, which I usually get it backwards every time I create new effects from scratch. It's routing effect in Xamarin Forms and platform effect on the platform. You can see here that we're missing two things. It requires you override two, on attached and on detached. So let's add those.
Now, is this in the platform specific project? Where are you right now?
So we're in the UWP project.
Yeah, okay.
So,
platform
so
specific.
whenever you're in the platform specific, it's a platform effect.
Let's see.
Yeah, this routes it. I mean, the naming kind of makes sense, when you look at it from a high level. All this really does is it says, hey, look for the matching class in the native platform and use that on the native control.
Yeah.
So like we said, we just want to change the background, right? So here's the key takeaway. Why would you use an effect? So there are two things you get. You have this element. The element is the Xamarin Forms control itself, or this control. This is the actual native button. I have access to the native button now. So anything on that native platform's API in UWP, it would be background. Oh, we have to cast it as a button. then we would have the button's properties, such as background. So if you're familiar with XAML and C#, these are the the UWP, WPF flavor XAML. So you set the background color. Nope. Have it back into me. This is what happens when you don't do it for a couple months.
Yeah, Visual Studio IntelliSense can sometimes not be your friend.
No, it is just control. Yeah, I think I'm. Yeah. Oh, I know what's happening here. So button D is using from Xamarin Forms. So let me comment that out quickly, and then get the right button in here.
Oh, so you do want the platform-specific button here.
Yeah, so I had it's just a coincidence that Xamarin Forms button name is also button. So because we need these using statements to be able to use resolution group name and platform effect, we ended up with a conflict in namespace. So we can clarify that by just doing that. The key takeaway is that this control, regardless of what platform you're on, this control is the native control that's being created by Xamarin Forms, and this is how you access the properties of that native control. So, and red. Oh, it's not a string. Let's use one of the colors, red. Is it okay if I zoom out a little bit? Can you still see that?
Yeah.
Okay. So what's happening is Xamarin Forms finds a match for the ID, right? The ID is my company dot background effect. All right, we've got a match. We're going to use this class and run the code that you have in unattached when Xamarin Forms is done creating the element. So Xamarin Forms at this point has done its native renderer, right? What we were talking about earlier. It used a renderer, and it took that button from Xamarin Forms XAML and created a UWP button. Now at this point, we're past that whole renderer lifecycle time span, and is just being attached to the Xamarin Forms layer. The button's already been created. We can access that button now by just casting this control to what you expect it to be.
Yeah. So I got a quick question. I'm curious with these two methods that you are overriding, on attached and on detached. So is this being slapped on to like just before the renderer does its thing, like as it's rendering the native button? It's just attaching this as a property? Or right after, okay.
So right after the renderer creates the instance.
Yeah. I see, okay.
So if you want to look at it in memory, right, you would have in memory, the only thing in memory right now is the abstraction of a button.
Yeah.
Right. And Xamarin Forms says, okay, we're on UWP. We need a UWP button. That's the renderer's job.
Okay.
So the platform renderer creates the button, and then after that button's created, then we'll get sent up to the Xamarin Forms layer to be used. At that point in the life cycle, if there's a match for effects, it's already been created. It says, okay, you have an effect class. Here's the control. You can also reference the element itself. So this dot element is the Xamarin Forms button.
Right.
So there are reasons to be able to do this. Let's say you had properties in your background effect. You can add public properties like, let's say, is enabled. We already have an is enabled property in the button itself, but let's say we didn't. We define this in the routing effect. We can access that in the native control. This is going to get a little
this might get confusing because, like you said, like there is enable property exposed on the button.
Yeah. Well, what's important here is that we're getting that by looking at the effects list. Right. So we look at the effects list of that rad the button, and then we can get our is enabled property.
Yeah, gotcha.
Okay. There's a couple of reasons to do that. One of them is like, let's say you have an event handler, a custom event handler. The Microsoft documentation that I showed you earlier is a good place to see how to do that. And in there, you would actually use the event handler to do different things or bubble up events. I do that in a demo I have for calendar control. The Xamarin Forms calendar control doesn't have selection of a range, right? So you can't have more than one thing selected to go from Monday to Friday. So what I do is I hook into the native platform's range changed event, and then I bubble that up to Xamarin Forms. But to keep things simple, just changing, the background is a good way to understand how the platform effect works.
Yeah. Hey, so folks in the chat room, I was noticing in my ear the music was getting too loud, so I pulled it back a little bit. If this bothers anybody, please let me know, and I'm happy to turn it off entirely.
All right. So we're actually done.
So let me ask you this. So on attached, you are wiring up the background property of the native control to what the effects property is, essentially, right?
Well, at this point, there are no effects properties. We're just using the effect to get access to the native control.
Background control, or the background property of the native control.
Yep.
Okay. And is there anything like you have to, like this one line of code, is it doing anything in memory? Like, do you have to like detach after every time you render this?
No. The reason why this is here is, let's say you don't want to leave any event handlers hooked up.
Yeah, that's what
it's a good way to prevent things like that.
I see.
Or let's say you're doing some custom Skia Sharp stuff, or let's say you wanted to use Win2D for video effects.
Yeah.
There's a lot of memory management you'd have to worry about. This is a good place to do it.
Gotcha.
But this won't be left over for some other button to get. And that's the advantage of having, it's not like an implicit style that's applied globally to all the buttons. It only gets affected for this button.
Yep. Okay, so shall we try? Do you think we're done?
Let's see if it blows up, or if I forgot something.
Hey, while you're doing this, I see our good friend Saduki, and I know exactly who that is, Sarah. Our good friend. So rainbows for you. Thanks for the follow, Sarah. We love you. We love you. Love you.
Why are we doing this? Right? The button has a background on.
Yeah, but I mean, you assume that you are doing it for something that you really want access to, but you don't have.
Yep.
Waves, Saduki.
And there we go. The button has a red background.
Ah, nice.
And let's get some of this debugging stuff. Now, how much time do we have left? So what if we wanted to do this in, Android? We come into Android and do the same exact thing. Button background effect, same exact class, except this time you're casting the control as the native Android buttons control.
So you do need to know a little bit as to how these native controls work and like what their names are, what some of their properties are, essentially, right? You are diving into native stuff here.
You wouldn't even be at this point if you didn't already know what part of the native thing you wanted to change.
Yeah,
right?
Of course.
Or you would look it up, like, hey, I don't like the hover effect in UWP. How do I disable the hover effect? This is a perfect time to do that.
Right. And this is kind of like the thing that we've always said about Xamarin Forms. Like, it will get you 95% of the way out there, where a C# .NET dev does not need to learn Android or iOS, and you just want to code over your abstracted UI stack. But then the reality is, once you start building a real world app, you will want to know a little bit about the native stack, because you are rendering native controls from your Xamarin or your XAML markup. So there are things you'll want to customize, and that's where looking up the native stuff really helps.
Yep. And in this case, the button, Xamarin and Microsoft did make sure there was a background property that does set this. So, if we did this, you have the same outcome.
It'll do the same, yep.
Yep. And behind the scenes, they're doing exactly the same thing we're doing in here. So in a way, you're getting the same amount of power that they have.
Yeah.
So nothing's hidden in a black box here.
Sure, yeah. Okay, now in this case, like, let's just say if Android did not have a background property on a button for some reason, like, let's just say that's the property we're dealing with. In this case, you will just not write the Android implementation, right?
Yep. So if we deploy this to Android, it just works.
Okay. So, like, it falls back to what? Like, let's just say the background property is just not there for Android, right? So what would it fall back to?
Nothing, because this doesn't exist at all.
Yeah.
It never finds a match for this on Android.
Okay.
It only finds a match in UWP because we did this. We are exporting we're saying, hey, this is my resolution group name. And then you only set that once in the whole project. And then for every effect you're creating, you're doing this.
Yep.
And you're saying it's of this type and it has this name. So in the case where you don't have one of those in the native platform, nothing happens.
Gotcha. Okay, so
it's better than if-defing a bunch of code.
Yeah, for sure. So, like, if I'm to take this to like what did you have in mind? You're trying to do the Android thing, right?
You mean, yeah? So let's say we added a new class to Android. But I'm only calling it .android so that it's easier to see in the file explorer and in maybe in other places. But we can prevent mistakes. We can copy the same resolution group name and use it here.
And while you're coding, Lance, I don't know if folks in the chat room, if you're new here, we have a fascination with chickens. So you will see in the chat room there's a custom emote for chickens, and I can try that. Hang on. There it is. You can just say coded chicken and it'll show up. Yep. And why don't we get some chickens to give us a little bit of company while you're coding. There you go.
Okay, so we are in the Android project now.
Okay.
The only difference between this and the other ones is we're just making sure that it points to the class that's in the Android project. So you can see we have the class here, and we've given it a resolution group name and the name of this particular effect.
And the Android button is called the button, I'm guessing.
I don't know off the top of my head, but we can figure that out quickly. So if we do this .control, or another way to do it is to do a quick run and you put a breakpoint there. A lot of times there are like intermediate classes that are being used that you don't expect them.
Yep.
So let me show you a pro tip.
I see what you're doing.
Yeah. So what we're going to do is we're just going to spin it up on Android. It's like right now, I don't know what the native API is. I'm not an expert in Xamarin Android, but I do want to be able to customize some of this control on Android. So here's how, a reverse engineer would do these kind of things if they had no access to like F12ing it or It's not Xamarin Forms, it's out in the open.
Yep.
So let's just wait for this to deploy, and then it'll hit our breakpoint, and we'll take a look at what this control is. Should be pretty quick with Android on this PC.
Okay, folks are having fun. I see our good friend Joe Goodwagner in the chat room, so he wants the chicken dance. Hang on, I got a couple of options here. So there's this guy. And if you don't like it, I got a few more chickens dancing as well. But let's stick with that for now.
I love the sombrero. Right.
Did it hit your breakpoint or no?
Not yet. We are still. This is the first time it's compiling for the Android project, so it takes a second. All right. It has been built, and we're just waiting for it to get published to the emulator. For people new to Xamarin Forms, it's not always this slow this first time. I mean, the first time it's this slow, but any subsequent deploys are much quicker.
Yeah.
All right. So we have hit our breakpoint, and I want to know what this control is. So let's take a look. It is an Android Support V7
widget
app compat button.
Okay.
And there are, like, Xamarin Forms has done a bunch of good stuff with making these renderers faster.
Yeah.
This was called the fast renderer.
Yes.
It's using the new stuff. So now if you wanted to make any tweaks, I have no clue how to do any Xamarin Android stuff, but now I just got access to the native control, and I can set the background to, I don't have any images, but you could do images, all sorts of stuff. Yeah, there's a lot of drawable options.
Could you use effects to have the same button look different on iOS and Android? Like, could you do a different background color right here? Because I mean, you're literally hooking up the property.
Yeah, you have full control over it now. So this same button, would look different. Funny enough is that this would be used to make the buttons look more the same.
Yeah, I know.
Right? Because some people don't want the
the classic iOS or Android differences. You want to like roll in a material style or something. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
But there we go. I mean, like, I would not have to know anything about Xamarin Android, and now I just was able to customize the native button.
So are you able to assign that background property just like you did for UWP and like complete that line of code? See that working?
I think it's a paint drawable. Yeah. And color is tricky on. That's fine. I actually have a snippet I always see for this.
What is paint drawable? This is. Why can't we just use system.color?
Yep. Well, a drawable lets you use anything, not just the color.
Yeah.
So let's look at what other options there are. So if we get rid of this and just do, so we can do an icon, animations, we can use vectors, bitmaps, circular clips, all sorts of options on Android.
Can we see any one of them? Just the easiest one?
So paint drawable, what I did was now we're going to use the Android color property. Red. Well, because you wanted to give it a different platform.
Give it a different one, yep.
Say blue violet. A safer way to do this would be this. Let's practice. If this control is app compat button.
Yeah.
And then we call it button. And in here we can say button background equals.
Yeah, and the whole parameters thing that you were talking about, this is where, like, to the point of making iOS and Android look the same, you're going to pass in things into your effects and then use that to style your native controls.
Yeah, so previously you would have your own custom renderers to do that, because then you get the native control and you have that standard style for your company, or
Right.
or design guidelines. Can you see the bottom of the emulator?
Not yet. Make it a teeny bit smaller.
All right. So as you can see, the button's
Yeah,
background
there
is
you go. Yay!
purple. Yeah.
This is a hooray moment. Hang on one second. If my buttons are slow today, they're like, we haven't had coffee.
Right.
There you go.
Button copy.
Nice, nice, very nice.
So it
Okay.
was super easy, right? I'm glad we decided to take the button route, because I
Yeah.
think that was pretty straightforward. I have a GitHub demo I will show you. Let
Yeah.
me pull that
Please
up
drop
real
it in.
quick. And make this smaller so you can see it. Let me know when the browser is available.
Yeah, I see it.
Okay, so this is my custom Xamarin demos repo. I put all sorts of edge cases and custom cases and like all sorts of different things that you don't typically find in your normal workflow. That 5% that you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Our last Twitch stream was using a dependency service. That demo is here at render image. This one is using the effects, so that's underneath the custom series label. Because what I do is, you see these labels, how they're above the bars,
Yep.
and in UWP it was up and to the left of the bar. I moved the label to the middle of the bar and turn it vertical. And that's a feature that's not available in the thing, but we could easily do it with access to the native platform's charts.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this demo, you'll find plenty of stuff up there. I'm available
Can
online.
you post a link to that GitHub repo, please?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then while you're doing that, hey, Code Hustler, good to see you. We are hanging on, just like everybody else, quarantined, working from home, juggling a bunch of things. But hey, we're all living. Yeah, let's not talk about the depressing stuff. Yeah, in the U.S., like we hit like 100,000 lives lost, and that's just beyond sad. So yeah,
And people
but
are having pool parties.
yeah, yeah, let's not get there.
Yeah.
So yeah, hopefully everyone's just staying safe and staying positive. Yeah, okay. So we have to hydrate. I don't know if you have a drink with you, Lance, but um,
Yeah.
there you go. So this is pretty cool. You have a few things here. Now let me ask you this: like, could you have you used effects on some more like custom controls, like any of the Telerik UI that we make for Xamarin?
So as a matter of fact, this release we just had, I built one of our premium demos. It took me about a year. This is like the
Jeez.
real deal.
Yes, I
Yeah.
know. I know exactly what you're talking
Right.
about. Yes.
And in here, you will see some real world enterprise, design guidelines that were required that you don't get out of the box,
Yeah.
and you needed to beat that last 2% or 1%. You can find those implementations here.
Yeah.
I do everything from, I use custom artificial intelligence to, in the bot. I hid an Easter egg in there. If anybody uses this demo and finds the Easter egg, hit me up on Twitter.
Yeah. So just so folks know, so we make a full suite of UI controls for Xamarin iOS, Xamarin Android, Xamarin Forms, and we do have a sample app that you can actually browse on the iOS and Android stores. And again, just for honesty, we're not the only ones. I mean, there are plenty of people making Xamarin Forms UI. We would like to think we provide a lot of things out of the box, and the documentation demos are good. But something we have been missing is like a real-world collection of apps that uses some of our UI, showcases some of the best practices, and kind of shows you the code for a full-on real world app that's in the store. So that's what Lance is talking about, and I'm so thankful to you, Lance, for you and your team and the Xamarin team for putting this out, because it's just going to showcases here's a real world app that's follows a few patterns, and it shows you the code, and everything is open source.
Yeah. And we frequently get questions like that, and doing these kinds of things in the scope of normal support isn't covered, right? It's very custom and it's full production. But if we release demos, a handful of demos that are full production, they could use them for guidance.
Absolutely.
And this is a good example. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. So with effects, we know where to start. You showed us a little bit as to how to use it. Anything else we need to know about effects?
I just highly recommend going to the Xamarin Docs and doing the create an effect walkthrough. We do exactly what we just did, except they show you in detail how it works, right, with a few little diagrams and the end results, and gives you the code. So by the end of it, they even use the background color for the entry here. And then don't stop when you're done with this. Go right on to the passing parameters one.
Yeah.
And this is where you get to see some really useful stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. So to me, like, hey, Code Hustle, thanks for the follow on Twitter. Appreciate you. Yeah, we are all developers trying to learn from each other, so appreciate that. Yeah, for me, like this has been like an eye opener because I've heard about effects, I've never actually used it. So I always went the route of custom renderers, which has a bunch of more bells and whistles because there are things you have to implement, and you don't have to do it if it's just a few properties you're trying to change.
Yeah, I mean, you can think of it as, matter of fact, there is a documentation in here. So here we go. That's in Introduction to Effects. There's an article in the Microsoft documentation that compares them.
I see.
And tells you when you should use one versus the other.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't see it there. But it gives you like a side-by-side. And in a top level, it's if you need to override default behavior, you use the renderer, because the renderer is what creates the control. Sure. And sets up everything. If you just need to make some customizations, go ahead and use an effect. It's much faster to start up. And, just do what you need to do quickly with just one or two properties, and you're good to go.
Absolutely. Okay, all right. I appreciate this a lot for you to take some time off and come and teach me something basic that I have not used. So, and I'm sure other Xamarin developers will benefit from this. So, thank you, Lance.
You're welcome. You'll find you start using this more often now that you have it, in your dev toolbox.
Absolutely. All right, folks. We appreciate you hanging out with us for about an hour or so that we went. You're going to see a lot of different things. I think there's a stream that's actually scheduled to go right as we end, and then we'll switch over. I think there's some Blazor stuff that we're doing, and then tomorrow is a chat show. We are doing site affinities on Monday. We're doing Unity development on Tuesdays, React on Wednesdays, Xamarin on Thursdays. So there's just love all around. So come and join us whenever your time permits, and we appreciate you. We love you all. Okay, so that's it from us. Thank you, Lance, and we shall see you on the next stream. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye, everybody. Have a good day.